You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So excited to be here. Rachel, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you feeling, Kirk?
Feeling great. Let me ask you, I'm going to start off by asking you just a simple question. Do you blush?
Yes. I've been told I blush. Yes.
Is that a frequent thing for you, a frequent blusher?
I don't think so, but it depends on the situation.
Well, of course, that's the whole point, right?
Right. I get flustered a lot, yeah.
So I'm not sure if this is like common knowledge or not, but not everyone blushes.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who just don't ever blush, but it's something that happens to most humans. And it's strange because as far as we know, it only happens to humans and not other animals.
Huh.
Now,
That's
blushing
a good
is when
point.
blood...
I've never thought about it. Yeah.
Now, blushing is when blood rushes to your face and your skin turns red. And it can be caused by a person being embarrassed, angry, or even aroused.
Oh my gosh.
What all these things have in common is that they are mental states.
Mm-hmm.
So blushing is distinct from flushing, which is where a larger area of your body or your skin becomes flush with blood. So flushing can have physical causes, whereas blushing has only mental causes and is restricted to just the face.
Right.
And it's really weird when you think about it. You can think of something and then your skin changes color. Like that's weird.
Huh.
That's really strange.
That is very weird, yeah.
Yeah, the assumption has usually been that people blush as an uncontrollable social cue. So if someone tells like a really dirty joke and you blush, you're signaling that you are shocked and aren't comfortable with something that was outside of the social norm. And there's certainly situations where someone might tell a joke with some friends and you'd be like, oh, that's fine. And someone might tell the same joke at work and you might blush because you're like, oh my gosh, this was not an appropriate place to tell that joke. And that's basically a subconscious way of signaling that you get that it was inappropriate and you're kind of not part of that. You're saying, hey, I get that what just happened is outside the social norms of this group, and I'm signaling with my face that I understand the norms, unlike this person. So that's one assumption of what's going on.
Right.
Similarly, if you blush when someone is flirting with you, it could actually signal attraction. And blushing can also be a social sign of embarrassment. Your body is sending a signal that says you understand that you did something perhaps outside of societal or group norms, and it's sort of a way to be like, showing some, almost like a self-deprecating, like, yeah, I know that was embarrassing.
Like,
really, but all those are really complicated and kind of weird. I guess complicated is a good word. Those are complicated mental things that are going on in your head,
right,
that are going on with this flushing of just the skin on your face. Now, I will say that we have a lot of really smart listeners, and I'm betting there's at least one of them right now going, hold on a second. Don't a few other animals do this? Like, don't turkeys change the color of their faces?
Well, yeah.
And you are right. They absolutely do. But the assumption has been that while the mechanism may be similar, the reason is different.
Right.
Like, turkeys don't do it because they're embarrassed.
No, they do it as part of their mating display to show that they're ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen turkeys run right into a glass wall in front of the other turkeys, and they don't like flush red, like, oh my gosh, they saw me crash into that.
Exactly.
Like, that's not a thing that happens.
I've also seen that, and I've also seen a turkey fully chase down a UPS driver, which was both sad and hilarious. Or was it a FedEx driver? One of the two.
Awesome. It remind me for our patrons, I will stay on and we'll record a little story about a little run-in I had with a turkey at work one time. So
Ooh,
patrons,
I have one too.
look for that in the bonus material on Patreon or your inbox. And if you're not yet a patron and part of the Society of Strange, go to patreon.com/strange by nature and check it out.
It's a lot of fun.
It is thought that only humans blush due to our perception of what other people are thinking. We have the ability to perceive what others are thinking about us. And Darwin himself proposed that blushing occurs when we think about what other people are thinking about us. I don't blush when I sing in the shower.
Right.
But if someone were to record me singing in the shower and play it publicly at a party or something that I didn't know it was going to happen, I'm probably going to blush, right?
I'm going to be beet red.
Right, because the second scenario involves me thinking about what others are thinking about me, and that's a really complex mental phenomenon that we don't think other animals experience.
Right.
So the reason I'm talking about blushing was because of a pretty fun research paper I read that came out back in July of this year. Now, Rachel, if you had to guess who blushes more, men or women, which would you choose?
So, if I had to guess,
what's your gut say?
I know what society wants me to say. My gut says
yeah, go for it.
men. I think society thinks women blush much more.
Well, society in this case is right. Women do tend to blush more than men. And if you had to think of an age group of females that was most prone to blushing by thinking about social embarrassment, what general age span would you choose?
Teenagers, early 20s.
Exactly, teenagers. So teenage girls, and that's exactly who these researchers chose to pick on, or sorry, that's the wrong word, chose to study.
Right.
They chose girls that were age 16 to 20. And to be clear, there are tremendous social pressures on teenage girls. And they are known to blush more because of some of those social pressures. So the goal of the experiment was to try to make teenage girls blush while they were inside an MRI machine to do some functional MRI imaging so they could study what was going on in their brains while the blushing occurred.
Okay.
So putting someone in an MRI is pretty straightforward. Measuring blushing is pretty straightforward as well. They just need to measure basically facial temperature. They put a little probe on their face, and if you blush, your face gets much hotter.
Right.
So they're able to measure that. The tricky part was, how do you make a bunch of teenage girls reliably blush? Any guesses, Rachel?
Put a picture of their
I think
crush.
what they came up with is pretty awesome.
Pictures of their crush or popular celebrity, figures or whatever, might be a
Maybe
thing.
that could induce a blush. Yeah.
I don't know. Making them think like they're in their underwear.
Okay. Yeah. Some sort of the whole
thing.
Showing up for the test in your underwear kind
Right.
of night mail kind of situation.
What did they do?
That would be probably unethical.
Right.
To somehow execute in this population.
Yeah.
The answer is much more simple.
Ooh.
It is karaoke.
Yes. You're laying on your back in an MRI machine. You've been asked to do karaoke. I'm blushing
it was
thinking about it.
It was a little more complicated than that. They actually had them come in several times.
Right.
So they had them come in a first time, and they were recorded, video recorded while they sang. And since I know everyone was curious, I did actually, hammer down on the research and figure out what did they have them sing. So they had to choose from 4 different songs.
Ooh.
They could sing "Hello" by Adele.
Okay.
"Let It Go"
Oh
from
my
Frozen.
God.
"All I Want for Christmas Is You" by Mariah Carey. And "All the Things She Said" by Tattoo. So those were their choices, and they actually brought in music professionals to try to help them pick songs that were challenging to sing well.
Yeah. Well,
So
those are definitely songs that are challenging to sing well. That's why we all belt it and do not care.
Yeah, it was they wanted them to feel embarrassed later on, because when they came back a second time, They were loaded into the MRI, and they had to watch a video recording of themselves struggling through the song.
Oh, no.
As well as watch another participant singing, sort of as a kind of as a control, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And then also probably to just, I think, to increase the embarrassment, they also had to watch a professional singer that they brought in singing the same song.
Oh.
The same clip from the song.
Oh, no.
And to make it even more embarrassing, they told them, which I don't think was actually true, but they told them that an audience would be watching the video of them singing at the same time they were watching it.
Oh, no.
And bingo, blushing aplenty.
I think I'm blushing just for them right now.
Just thinking about it, right?
Uh-huh.
So here's where it gets weird. So remember when I said that Darwin supposed that we blush because we're thinking about how others perceive us?
Yeah.
That's a pretty common belief.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense, but according to this study, it turns out that may be wrong. So when the research team looked at the brains of blushing people, they could see which parts were lighting up and active. And the cerebellum, which is thought to be involved in emotional processing, did light up. But the parts of the brain we previously, through previous research, believe are associated with processing the understanding of what other people are thinking, basically remained dark. So at the time they were blushing, they were not thinking about other people. They were just doing their own emotional processing. And so it seems that you can blush without thinking about other people's thoughts, which kind of goes contrary to what all the previous sort of speculation had been about why humans blush and what the mechanism is in the brain.
Right.
So this could mean that sort of the psychological piece of blushing isn't quite what we thought it was. But it was just a really cool bit of research and a clever bit of technique to use karaoke to induce blushing. I just really appreciated the creativity that went into it to study this sort of strange thing that humans do.
Yeah.
And I love it when researchers find novel ways to get the results.
Oh, it's so fun.
So like a lot of studies, this one may actually raise more questions than it answers. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Strange results mean we have more to learn and more to study. And the world gets more and more interesting the less it is how we think it works, maybe.
Right.
So very cool. This mostly came from, there was a paper that you can read. It is fully available online, open source, which is fantastic. It's called The Blushing Brain. Yeah, it's called The Blushing Brain, Neural Substrates of Cheek Temperature Increase in Response to Self-Observation in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B, Biological Sciences. There was also a nice summary article on Science Daily called Singing the Science, Using Karaoke to Examine Blushing. So, Rachel, that's what I got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed it and it didn't make you blush.
That was so fun. Thanks, Kirk.
Well, let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll find out what Rachel's got for us.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Now, I feel like at this point in time, you all probably know that one of my favorite topics is pollination. I don't know if that's come across quite on the show. I don't know
if you talked about it that much on the show.
I've talked about it here and there and like insects and things like that on the show quite a few times. I know that I tend to be more in the ocean in Australia.
The ocean, yeah.
And that is another like favorite topic of mine, so that's fair. But pollination is also one of my favorite topics. I am really always looking at bees and wasps and any little flying insect that are crowding around the flowers that are around right now. I'm having a great time. I'm taking so many pictures. Most of my camera is truly just bugs.
Are you seeing many beetles?
I do.
Awesome.
I see a lot of beetles. I actually caught, I didn't catch, but I took a picture of a couple different sweat bees, which were really cool to find. Loved seeing that because they're like metallic and it was really cool. Anyway.
So that's just my personal like rant about how bees get all the credit when most plants on Earth are pollinated by beetles
Oh, yeah.
and not by bees.
Exactly.
Drives me crazy.
That's very fair.
The bees have a much better PR department than the beetles do.
They're just so fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
I do love beetles as well. So anytime I can see any sort or learn more about pollination, I'm having a great time. But one of the pillars of pollination that I know you've talked about when you teach pollination and what I've talked about when it comes to pollination is that it's an accident. It's not on purpose on the act of the insect.
Yeah, yeah.
The flowers produce
They're not
nectar.
out there trying to pollinate.
Exactly. The flowers are producing nectar that attracts the bugs, the insects, or in some case birds as well, who then get covered in some of the pollen, and then when they go to another flower, they drop some of the pollen of the one flower to the next one where they're eating more nectar. Okay?
Yeah, and they'll eat some of the pollen too.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
Nature laughs at our boxes.
Awesome. Tell me all about it. So I'm assuming there's going to be an animal that is purposely pollinating?
Yes. So there is this
Sweet. What is it?
moth. There is a moth that is the only pollinator of this particular flower. You know about the yucca plant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. They only have yucca moths that pollinate yucca plants.
Okay.
They only have a single pollinator. It's kind of like how orchids are very, very particular in what pollinator can actually pollinate their flower. Yucca plants are very similar. This is amazing, by the way. So the yucca moth overall looks boring. It is a small little moth that is pretty much all white, has black compound eyes. You wouldn't notice it really. Okay. It's just this little white moth. Okay.
Little kind of nothing thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Neither can live without each other. They're that interdependent. Yeah. Interdependent. What happens is we'll start with the adults. Okay.
Okay.
We're going to start at the end of the cycle. Adult yucca moths, super nondescript, very brief adult life. They are not eating anything. Okay? They don't need to. Their only purpose is to mate. So what will happen is a male and a female will find each other, go on to a blooming yucca flower, mate on that flower, and collect some. I know. And what they will do is they will mate on the flower, gather pollen underneath its chin. They emerge, they'll mate, and then the job of the female will go on. She will go fly to a different flower. She will inspect the flower to see if it's at the correct stage. She will find out if there are already eggs in the flower, in the ovary of the flower, because the yucca moths lay eggs in the ovary of the flower. So she will go in, see if there are any in there. With her antennae, she can smell it, and she will go in, lay her eggs in the ovary, and then as part of it, she has that pollen, right?
Yeah.
After she's done, she's laid her eggs in the ovary. She takes that pollen and goes to the stigma of the flower, and she deposits the pollen on that part of the flower, thus pollinating the flower.
And starting the whole next step of the process.
The fruiting process. And the reason why is because her eggs, her babies, as they grow with this flower, they're eating the seeds.
Wow.
So she has to purposefully pollinate the flower in order for her babies to then eat.
That is mind blowing.
Isn't it?
It brings up so many questions, like chicken and the egg type questions. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how these species must have co-evolved to be like this, and then become dependent on each other. I'm sure at one point they were not dependent on each other.
They weren't,
and then
but
they
now
became
they
dependent
are.
on each other. Yeah, so cool.
It is extremely cool. And it's one of the only instances of pollination that is purposeful in the animal world. Like no other animal that we know of purposefully does that.
Wow,
Isn't that cool?
that is super cool, Rachel.
Yeah. I mean, it's a short and sweet story, but it's this wild like interdependence between this moth and this one particular plant. They think that the moth started it, and then it became more and more like, I have to do this kind of thing with the flower. Like,
Well, you can see how I could definitely see how that would happen from an evolutionary standpoint, where there's probably multiple pollinators that are pollinating this yucca, but once this moth kind of figures this out, it starts to be where maybe other species are sort of shut out of the pollination process because the moth is so effective at pollinating it that like they can't get around to it.
exactly.
Other species that did pollinate could have died off, or maybe they started to pollinate the species that were the individuals that were best able to handle their eggs. And so over time, it changed the plant enough that it became not good for other species.
Exactly.
You know, because it was more and more tailored to the exact needs of this particular species. Because the moths are essentially farming the yucca.
Exactly.
They're like yucca farmers. So of course, they're going to have influence on what kind of yucca are growing over time. So cool. Do we know, like, population-wise, are these both doing pretty well? Like, 'cause if the moth were to get wiped out, there goes the yucca, or vice
Right.
versa.
As far as I can tell, is they're doing just fine. Partially because there are multiple species of yucca and a particular yucca moth that goes with them. So there's lots of different species. It's a small group, but they're doing okay from what I could tell.
Oh, so does each subspecies of yucca has its own subspecies of moth too? Wow.
I know.
That is really, really, really cool.
Isn't it so cool? It's
Nature's just the best.
Isn't nature
so
awesome?
cool.
Yeah. And the other thing too is the fact that they check on whether or not there are eggs in the flower already.
Yeah, that's a really cool part of it too.
Yeah, because if there were already eggs in there and she laid her eggs in there, then odds are the flower wouldn't have enough like seeds and like juice to go. So the eggs would die and wouldn't allow the like the plant itself would be like, there's too much going on in here that is not us. They would see it as like a pathogen and would stop, like more or less it would abort the flower, and the eggs then would all die. So the fact that they're like paying attention to, oh, I smell eggs in this one, I'm going to a different flower.
Huh. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And generally speaking too, like for those of you who are worried, there are more seeds in the flower, or once it fruits, there are more seeds in there than the larva can eat. So,
sure, yeah. Otherwise, there'd be no yucca.
Exactly. So it's truly like, it's this big circle and they all are supporting each other. And it's just wild because then once the larvae are done and they've eaten what they can, they'll burrow out of the fruit and then go into the ground, make their cocoon, wait until the spring, and then it'll start all over again.
So cool.
It's so cool. And it's beautiful. The other thing that's really cool is we've known about this since like the 1870s.
Really?
So we've known about this for a
that's cool.
very long time, which is
Nice.
so cool. Yeah. But I just wanted to talk about yucca moths and their wildness of the fact that yucca moths are the only ones that pollinate yuccas, and they do it on purpose. My mind is blown, and truly just, it's so good.
Wild.
Well, that's what I had for you this week. I got some really great sources from the U.S. Forest Service and USDA. There was a really great source from Cool Green Science, which was Stories of the Nature Conservancy. So The Yucca and Its Moth by Chris Heltzer. And then I also used the Master Naturalist Texas chapter, had a great talking point article about yucca and the yucca moth. So, yeah.
Very cool. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks to you all. And if you want to learn more, there's lots of really cool articles and things to be able to see moths and yuccas, even though they're boring looking, but the relationship is amazing. Oh. I think that brings us to the end of our show, Kirk.
It sure does.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what a wild ride. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.